Biophysical Observatory calculated on August 7th, 2027, that this asteroid would miss the planet Earth by about 23,000 miles. Other scientists are quite concerned that when it makes its next pass in 2039, that there could be a collision due to the gravitational pull of this asteroid by the planet Earth.
Astronomers warn that a collision is only one of a range of possibilities for this chunk of rock. And according to a report in CNN Interactive, if it did hit the Earth, it would have the force of 2 million atomic bombs. John also tells us that a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters.
It is entirely possible that the next generation will not have adequate amounts of drinking water. Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health has been recommending for years that countries begin to conserve water. Approximately 1/2 billion people in the world presently do not have adequate amounts of drinking water, and it's predicted that by the year 2025, approximately 2 billion people or more will not have adequate amounts of drinking water, which is over a third of the world's population.
Before we write that off as a problem for third world countries, consider this. A CBS News report in January of 2000 indicates that 46 of the 48 contiguous states have drinking water that is contaminated by a gasoline additive mandated by Congress for the purpose of cleaning up the air. It makes the water bitter, smell like kerosene, and it is deadly. Incidentally, Chernobyl, translated, means wormwood. Dare we ignore the signs of the times? Another prophecy dealing with the last days has largely been lost amid the noise of war and rumors of war. Daniel, Isaiah, Zedekiah, and Jeremiah all speak of the destruction of Babylon, but they also describe it as a great and powerful city.
When Nebuchadnezzar reigned in Babylon 2,500 years ago, he left his legacy on cuneiform tablets so that those who would follow him would rebuild the temples and the palaces that he constructed in ancient Babylon. The Bible says that as part of the ancient time, just prior to the Battle of Armageddon, ancient Babylon, the wickedest and yet the most powerful city of the ancient world, will again be rebuilt to assume a major role in end-time events. Saddam Hussein has been rebuilding the ancient city of Babylon just as it was during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. And to commemorate his building of the city, he actually held the Babylon Festival. As part of the Babylon Festival, he had a medallion made. As you can see in this medallion, he put his picture beside that of Nebuchadnezzar. He made it so that he and Nebuchadnezzar even looked alike.
Few would argue that Saddam Hussein sees himself as a man of destiny, and by making Babylon a great city once again, he would secure his place in history. But Hussein is probably ignoring the rest of the biblical prophecy that says this glorious new Babylon will be destroyed in a single hour. We have only touched upon a few of the dozens of prophecies that are regarded by many as signs of the last days, but the signs seem frighteningly clear. If the prophets can be believed, the end time is very near.
The critics that are saying that we've always been upon the end times and what proof do we have that this is any different, in one sense have a good point, and I think that's how God intended it, so that we would be prepared and always on our toes for when that happens.
Jesus repeatedly encourages followers to pay attention to the prophetic signs of his return. In fact, in Luke 21:28, Jesus said, "When these things begin to come to pass, then lift up your head and look up, because your redemption draws nigh."
That being the case, there is one more sign we would do well to watch for. This is the sign that warns of the last great battle that marks the true end of the age and the beginning of the millennium. Ezekiel speaks forcefully of a great army that will appear on the scene in the last days, pouring out of the land of the north and led by a prince named Gog.
Most scholars agree that the invasion force will be a multinational coalition headed up by Russia. The ancient term Meshach actually refers to the modern city of Moscow, and the ancient Tubal refers to the modern city of Tobolsk.
But Ezekiel also warns that they will bring with them Persians, today's Iran, Libya, and Ethiopia, and in the latter years they will seek to annihilate Israel.
John the Revelator adds considerable detail to Ezekiel's account. He says that the army will be considerably larger than any army ever assembled.
In a striking example of how prophecy can be read in today's headlines, in April 1961, Red China boasted they could field an army of 200 million soldiers.
Ezekiel says Gog will come with many nations, a great horde, like a cloud that covers the land, and they will seek to annihilate the land that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people.
The destruction of Israel will seem assured, but at the last minute, the Lord will step in and wreak a terrible retribution upon the forces of Gog.
The world, according to the prophets, ancient and modern, is now politically and geographically aligned to see the prophecies fulfilled. But is there any definitive way to tell when that battle will begin?
In Daniel 9, there's a prophetic timetable. It speaks of 70 groups of 7 years each, or a total of 490 years. The clock began ticking when the command went out to rebuild Jerusalem after having been destroyed by Babylon. It has stopped the day that Christ rode into Jerusalem to proclaim himself as the Messiah, the King. That was exactly 483 years to the day. 69 of the 70 weeks are now used up. The prophetic clock stopped at the appointed time, and Daniel described a gap between the 483 years and the final 7 years of the prophetic timetable. During that gap, the events that were once prophetic have now been confirmed in history, and we are now looking for that clock to start ticking again.
According to the Bible, the Middle East conflict will continue to escalate, and it will threaten world peace. And at that time, I believe that the Antichrist and the spirit of the Antichrist will solve this problem to make him the #1 person in the world. The future world leader or future Führer will make a strong covenant with the Israelis, and under his protection the temple will be rebuilt in Jerusalem, and the law of Moses of offering and sacrifice will be reinstituted. The prophet Daniel makes it very plain that an Israeli leader will make a treaty with the European Union, and that constitutes the beginning of the Great Tribulation, lasting 7 years. The climax of this Great Tribulation is the Battle of Armageddon.
Perhaps we can interpret the signs of the times, at least some of them. The question is, are we willing to face the reality of the events that are foreshadowed? Today, we can sit in front of our computer or TV and see and hear the voice of prophecy being fulfilled. With the help of scientific knowledge gained over the centuries, we can now quantify the prophecies about changes in the earth. But other things are more difficult. Generation after generation of people around the world have tried unsuccessfully to eliminate war. Now, even as we struggle toward what seems to be the inevitable final battle, success seems no nearer. If these are truly signs of the times, is there any way to escape the devastation that is predicted for the world as a result of the greed and pride of the Antichrist, or avoid the mark of the beast?
My Jesus, my Savior, Lord, there is none like you. All of my days, I want to pray.